On behalf of Procurement Services, I would like to thank you for watching our Epro overview training video. This will be the first of many videos that we will release on YouTube in order to help train our user community through these tough times. First, I would like to say that Epro is our electronic procurement system that handles all the college's purchasing needs. And in this system, there are three roles. There is the role of a shopper, a requester, and an approver. In this video, I will take you through those three roles so that you have a better understanding. Currently, I am in the home page or the login page of what shoppers would typically use to sign in. So I'm going to sign in as a shopper right now. And once I sign in, it is going to take me to the Epro landing page. It is important to note that regardless whether you are a shopper, a requester, or an approver, you will be taken to the same Epro landing page. In Epro, there are three ways to begin an order. You can order utilizing one of our many Punchout suppliers, you can order utilizing one of our many hosted catalogs, or you can order utilizing one of our many showcase forms. In this video, I will take you through the ordering process and how to utilize each one. Let's start with a Punchout order. Now, please note, before every order, as best practice, I like to look in the top right-hand corner at this shopping cart icon and make sure that the dollar amount there is reading 000. And when I click on that, it should tell me that there are no items in my cart. This will prevent any further confusion down the line during the checkout process. Now, for this example, I will use High Touch, our office supply vendor. And notice, when I click on the tile, it takes me out externally to this Punchout vendor's website. That is what a Punchout vendor does. When you click on the tile, it will take you out to the vendor's website to complete your purchase. So for this example, I will navigate through the vendor's website and click on Copy Paper. I will then select what type of copy paper I would like, and then choose one of the many on-contract items that High Touch is presenting. So for this example, I will just change the quantity so we have a nice decent amount, and I will add it to the cart. Right? At this point, I can either continue shopping or I can review and check out. Now, most vendor Punchout sites are going to give you this option once you add an item to their cart. Sometimes the wording may be different, but the process should remain the same. So for this case, I will review and check out. Now, it's going to give me an order summary. Most Punchouts are going to give you this same screen. As I said, some of the wording may be different, but it should follow the same relative process. And then once I click Submit Order, it is going to take that cart from High Touch or from whatever Punchout vendor I did and bring it back into the Epro system so I can complete the checkout process. Now, the shopping process is complete. We have added an item to this cart, and now begins the checkout process. Now, from this moment on, the checkout process, no matter what type of order you are doing, whether it is a Punchout, whether it is a hosted, or whether you are utilizing one of our many showcase forms, this checkout process remains the same. So this is the simple checkout screen, or the first checkout screen you're going to encounter, where it's going to simply ask you for your description. That is the only required field. So in this case, I would say testing Punchout order. And then as you notice below, there are many other fields that you can feel free to utilize. There is a PI or department head field. There's a project number field if it is relative. There's a work ordered field if it is relative. And then there is an accounting date field. That accounting date field is going to be important, and I will mention it down the line on when and where it is utilized. So just keep it in your head as we go forward. So in this case, I can hit Save or I can hit Proceed to Checkout. Once I clicked Proceed to Checkout, it is now requiring two data elements. That is a shipping address and an accounting code. So to begin with, let's start with the shipping address. Down below, you will see the Ship To field. Now, if I click the Edit button to the right, I'm going to see a blue hyperlink that says Select from Org Addresses. Once I click Select from Org Addresses, I can simply type in the building number and hit Search. Once I hit Search, I can select the address, and then on the next screen, it is going to ask me for the building and room number, so I can simply type in Belfer 111. Now at this point, I can hit Save, but if I don't want to have to do this for every order, I can hit Save for this address for future use. Once I click this checkbox, I can then name the address default address. And right below it, there's a checkbox that will say, check this box to make this the default address in the future. So as long as this box is checked, every order will inherit this shipping address. So if I click save, I'll now see that the shipping section has a green check, which means I have satisfied the requirements, and I can move on across the ribbon to the next section necessary to complete the order. Now, if I click the accounting code section, I can see that it is requiring an index and account number from me. Now, as a shopper, I may not know this information, which is okay, because as a shopper, your role and responsibility can technically end here. You can then assign this cart by utilizing the blue button in the right-hand corner and assign it to a requester who can then complete this checkout process. Now, I don't want to discourage you as a shopper. If you do know this index and account number, feel free to enter it. But for us, during this training video, we are simply going to assign this cart to a requester. And how do we do that? Well, we would click the Assign Cart button, and then we will say Search for an assignee, and then click the blue hyperlink that says Search for an assignee, and we will simply type in the user. So in this case, I will assign it to myself, and click Assign. Now you will get a confirmation that this cart has been assigned. Now, one thing I do want to touch on, and this is a very important section in the ePro process, is the My Carts and Order section. Now, in order to access that, on the left-hand side, we are just going to hover over the shopping cart icon, go to My Carts and Orders, and then click View Carts. Now, if I click View Carts, I have two subtabs. That is Draft Carts, and that is Assign Carts. Just to break them down, Draft Carts are any carts that I have been working on that perhaps I did not complete. So, as I said, if, for example, I click on View, it will take me into the cart that I was working on. Now, in the beginning of this training video, I told you guys before I start an order, I always look at the top right-hand corner at the shopping cart icon and make sure that that says 000. So in this case, if I wanted to start an order, I see that there is something currently in my cart. I can then navigate back to the cart icon, My Carts and Orders, View Carts, and create a cart if I wanted to create a new cart and keep the existing cart that I was working on. And this will also be the area in which I can access those existing carts. But also what this allows me to do is click on the Assign Cart function, and I can see that the cart that we just recently created to test the Punchout order. And if I wanted to, I can click the drop down button and click Unassign. And that would take me right back into the high touch Punchout order that we were working on. Now in this case, I'm just going to reassign this back to myself. Search for assignee. And click and assign. Now please allow me one moment just to log over to the requester profile so that we can complete this shopping cart. Now that I'm signed into the Luminous portal at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, I can show you the first difference between a shopper and a requester and an approver. So first, through the Luminous portal, I have two links. One that shoppers would utilize, so if I click it, it's going to take me to the login page that we utilize to sign into our shopper account. But if I'm a requester and an approver, then I will click the second link, and that's going to utilize single sign-on to log me directly into my Epro account. Reason being, shoppers don't have any financial security profiles within our system of record, which means there's less risk for a shopper to access the Epro system. But requesters and approvers do have finance security profiles, which means that they need higher levels of authentication that our single sign-on method uses in order to ensure the security of their login. Once I am signed in as a requester, I can see in the top right-hand corner that I have alerts similar to any social media platform, just showing that something new has came into my alert queue that is requiring attention. So if I start with the little bell icon, I can see that I have 3 carts assigned to me. Those are just running notifications. Those are going to show that the cart that we had previously assigned has been assigned multiple times, right? Once I go from there, if I click on the flag, those are my actionable items. So I can then click on the cart assigned to me, and then I can access it simply by clicking on the shopping cart name. Once I get to this, I am back in the checkout process, but this time as a requester. Now, previously, the shopper had already filled out this description, so I can simply click proceed to checkout and take me to the next page. Now, following the top ribbon, I can see that there is one required action from me in order to complete the checkout process. Now, maybe that's not the only thing that I would need done, right? But for now, it is requiring me to enter the index and the account number. In order to do that, I'll simply click the edit button, type in the index number and the account, and hit save. Now, as you notice, this index number is then going to link to a fund, an organization, and a program, and if applicable, the activity and location. So all I'm doing when I'm entering accounting codes is entering the index and the account number. Now, it is very important to note that if I do not know one of these elements, I can simply hit select from all values, and I can do a description search and say maybe office. I always say be general and then be decisive in your decision. And maybe I'll select office supplies and hit save. Now, if you notice at the top ribbon, I have satisfied all the necessary requirements to now submit this cart to workflow, to submit this cart for approval, which is the very important role of the requester. Only a requester will have access to this button in the top right hand corner that says submit to workflow. So as you notice with a shopper, the only button that we had was assign cart. That is the same for an approver. So the only button that an approver would have is the assign cart button, because only a requester can submit this to workflow, or in other words, submit this for approval. So if I click submit to approval or submit to workflow, it will now send this in to be approved by the approvers within that workflow. And we'll go through that in a moment. I want to take this time to go through the checkout process a bit more thorough. If I'm following along with the top ribbon over here, I notice that there are internal notes and attachments and external notes and attachments. Now, what is the difference? Internal notes and attachments can only be seen by Epro users who can access the cart once it becomes a requisition. External notes and attachments are attachments that will distribute or attempt to be distributed to the suppliers with the purchase order. So if I click back into internal notes and attachments, right below I have an add attachments button, which I can click on, and then I can select a file. So if I select the file, it will bring open the browser, or I can add a link and name the link and simply add the URL and hit save changes. Right? If I go to external notes and attachments, I'll notice the exact same add attachment button. I can click add attachment and the same box appears. So in this case, if I just hit select files and I add the attachment, it will add it, and I can hit the save the changes and you will see the attachment added below. Now, once I'm done, I always say as a requester, just click final review. On the final review page, I can see a summary of the entire cart. So I can see the general section that will show us the description that the shopper entered at the beginning of this order, as well as any other information that they entered utilizing one of the various fields. I can also see our ship to address. I can see any accounting codes entered, any internal or external attachments. I can see the supplier that we're ordering from, and I can see the items that we're ordering. Now, once I am done, if I approve of this order as a requester, I can see that I have a submit to workflow button, or as I said, submit for approval. By clicking this submit to workflow button, I can now see that the requisition was submitted to be approved. Through the link right here where it says requisition and the number, I can click back into that requisition and see exactly where this requisition is being routed to. Or, in other words, I can view the workflow. In order to view the workflow for this specific requisition, I can click the PR Approvals tab, and that will show me the workflow. Every requisition has to go through a banner budget authorization 1 and a banner budget authorization 2 step. Those are automated steps that allows for our system of record to validate that the user who is submitting this requisition for approval has the ability to post against both the fund and org of the index that was chosen when we were building the cart. So also, I can see that in the middle or in between, because this is such a low dollar order, it is only routing for departmental approval. We'll trigger multiple different workflow situations throughout this training, but I can always click on View Approvers and see exactly who the approvers are for this workflow step. That should be available for every workflow step. Once I am done with that, I can then proceed to building another order by clicking either on the Home Page button or the Epro logo. Now that I am back on the Epro homepage, it is not necessary for me to switch back to the shopper account, since any account could technically complete the shopping process. So as I am logged in as a requester, I will now showcase what it's like to use a hosted catalog. Now, as I said previously, before every order, I like to look in the top right hand corner at the cart icon and make sure that my cart is 000 and there are no items in it, so that it does not complicate the checkout process down the line. Now, what's the difference between a hosted supplier and a Punchout supplier? So I'm just going to click on one of the tiles for a hosted supplier, and as you notice, when I clicked on it, it did not externally take me out to that supplier's website. Rather, it generated a search bar so I can search through a hosted catalog that is hosted on our Epro system. So if I know the part number, I can simply search the part number, I can search the description here, or I can just hit search and see their entire catalog. Once I bring up their catalog, I'm just going to start by adding a few items to it. So we'll just add a couple, and notice as I'm adding the items in the top, it is accumulating my cart. So I no longer have those 000, I now have whatever I'm adding to it. Once I am done adding items to this cart, I can simply click on that cart icon and hit View My Cart. Now, from that point, the shopping process is complete. As I said previously, from now on, the checkout process always remains the same. And I like to go through this a couple of times because I found that repetition is the best practice when you're training somebody. So same thing here. I can enter the description. So testing hosted order. Right, I can utilize any of the various fields here. I can either hit save or proceed to checkout. Now, if you were a shopper, the first time around, it asked you for a shipping address. So because this requester profile already has a shipping address, it is not requiring the user to enter a shipping address. So as you see, if I click on shipping, I'm already showing this requester's profile shipping address. So all that is being required is to enter accounting codes. So similar how we did it in the past, we can click on the edit button and enter our accounting codes. So just in case the question comes up, if you did want to split this amongst multiple indices and multiple accounts, you can always click Add Split and then enter the additional amount. So once you click Add Split, you notice you have a drop down. You can split by percentage of price, quantity, or amount of price, whichever one you want. For the sake of this training, I will not split, so I'm just going to close this out and re-enter our index number. And then we'll practice split funding a little down the road. So I can review this order. Like I said, I always click the final review button. That way I can see just an overview of everything that was accumulated within the cart. So one question that I commonly get at this point is, well, what if I want to remove an item from this cart? So while you're looking down at the item section, you'll notice that every item has a checkbox to the right of it. So if I wanted to remove one of these items, I can simply click the checkbox, scroll slightly up to the 4 selected line items drop-down box, and I can hit the drop-down and say remove selected items. Once I hit that and select go, now if I scroll back down to the items, I will notice that that item has been removed. If I am satisfied with this cart, I can always hit submit to workflow and submit this cart for approval. Now that I've submitted this for approval, once again, I could always go back into the cart, select the PR approvals tab, see exactly where this is routing. And now because this is a higher amount, I've triggered multiple workflow steps. I've triggered a finance step, a buyer review step, a purchasing manager step, a financial administrator review step. And like any of those steps, I can always click and see exactly who the approvers are. One thing that I do want to bring to point at this point is this history tab. So every requisition or cart or purchase order or invoice has a history tab associated with it. This is a detailed audit log of any type of change that has been impacted on that document. So as you can see, it is showing me any modifications. It is showing the focal elements. It is showing the item that I removed. It is showing that it passed through the budget authorization step. And as we said, that is to validate that the index is valid. That is also to validate that the person who is submitting against this index has the necessary financial security to do so. Now that we have completed a punch-out order and a hosted order, I figured we could take a little time to talk about the showcase forms. The two most commonly used showcase forms are the blanket order form and the non-catalog order form. So I'm going to start by clicking on the non-catalog form tile. Once I click on that tile, the form will populate for me to complete. Now I'm not going to complete it just yet, as I want to tell you what's the difference between the non-catalog form and the blanket order form. So if I scroll down on the non-catalog form, I have item-driven fields. I have product description, catalog number, quantity, estimated unit price, manufacturer part number, etc. If I close this and click on the blanket order form, you will notice I do not have the ability to change the quantity. I also do not have any of the part number fields. All I have is the product description and the total price to manipulate. So what is the difference between the two? The non-catalog form is only used when you want to order an item from a supplier that is not either a punch-out supplier or a hosted supplier, or an item that they are not offering through those platforms. I want to note, on any form on the left-hand side, you can find instructions on when to use the form and how to use the form in case you ever have trouble filling out the form. Also, I want to note that any required pieces of information will be in bold on the form so that you know exactly what is missing in case you run into any trouble, or you know exactly what is required in order to add this form to your cart. Now we can start completing the form. So the first piece of required information is the supplier that we are ordering from. Notice once I start typing in the supplier name, it's automatically going to start populating suppliers that fit this naming profile. I can then select the supplier that I want to choose and complete the rest of the form. Please note, if it is a brand new supplier, I'm going to complete a separate training video on how to add a supplier into the Epro system, and then put the link in the description below. So continuing on with the process, I can see any distribution information which will show me where the PO will distribute down the line. If I scroll down to the next required piece of information, the question is this a contract? So if there is a contract associated with this order that you need purchasing to review, please select yes. If there is any type of documentation that you want purchasing to review, such as terms and conditions or some sort of warranty information or anything that you need legal or purchasing to review, I would select yes for this option as well. The next required piece of information is the product information. So whenever completing a non-catalog form, it is required that you attach a supplier quote. So from that supplier quote, you would basically be copying the data for the item over to the non-catalog form. So you can enter the item name, enter the catalog number from the quote, enter how much you're going to be ordering, and then the unit price. The next requirement is the commodity code section. The commodity code is the general classification that that item falls into. So notice when I hit search, I can type in beakers, and then I can select laboratory beakers, as this item falls into that classification. But if I did not find the classification, then I can do a more broad search and maybe search lab and then select from the most appropriate option available. Once I select this, I can then complete the rest of the form. If I know the manufacturer name and part number, then I can enter it there. If there are any health and safety concerns, I can trigger one of these flags, and that will route this requisition through workflow to our environmental health and safety team so that they can review the order. Down below, there's the box here that says if confirmation only, select confirmation only in the box below. When I click that and select yes, then I can trigger whether or not I want to send this to the supplier. What this basically would mean is if I have an invoice that I am just doing this to satisfy payment for, then I don't have to distribute this to the supplier so they don't duplicate the order. But in this case, I want to send this order to a supplier, so I'm going to say yes to this question. Special payment instructions, if I select this drop down box and type in any special payment instructions, will trigger an email that gets sent to accounts payable so that they can be aware of any special payment requirements for this. Down below we have independent contractor and consultant request only questions. You're going to see these questions across a few of our forms, so they will look familiar as we go through this process. So if it's the PO for an independent contractor / consultant to be paid in the aggregate in excess of $2,000, is this payment for services that are similar to those currently or previously provided by an employee of Yeshiva University or affiliate? Is this payment to a current or former employee of Yeshiva University or one of its affiliates? So if any of them apply, please select yes. For the sake of this training, I'm going to select no. Then down below, for foreign vendors, are these goods or services to be used or provided in the United States? So if it is yes, say yes. If it is no, say no. And if it is no, then please put the country that these goods or services would be used. Down below is the internal and external attachment sections. These are linked over to the internal and external attachment sections that I showed you previously on the checkout screen. This is where you would attach your quote from the supplier. Now, in most cases, I find it that quotes should be attached to the external attachment section. So in this case, we can browse, select from the files, and then I'll just attach this as an example of a quote, and then hit save. That will ensure that when the PO gets distributed, that it will include the quote so that the supplier can reference. Now, another area that we would utilize these internal and external attachments, or another reason, which will be included in the how to add a new vendor link, but I just want to reference here, is if you were going to attach a brand new vendor's W-9, then you can attach that as an internal attachment. But like I said, I won't dive too much into that because I'm going to do an additional video on that. So if I scroll up and make sure that I see that all the required information is completed and filled out, I can simply add this and go to my cart. Now, it is important to note that every non-catalog form is simply one item. So if you were going to do multiple items on a non-catalog form, then you would have to do multiple non-catalog forms. I'm also going to do a separate video on how to make that process as fast as possible and as seamless, and I'm going to link that in the description below. Now, from this point on, even though it was a showcase form, as I previously said, the checkout process is the exact same. So I need to enter a description, testing non-catalog form. I can hit proceed to checkout. As you know, the shipping is already saved in my profile, so I do not need to complete that. And I am simply entering the accounting codes that I am going to use for this funding. So if I hit edit, I can enter my index number and I can enter my account and hit save. Pardon me, I entered the wrong account number and hit save. And now this cart is ready to be submitted to workflow. One thing that I did not note that I wanted to note is if you wanted to see the workflow that this cart was going to take without submitting it, you still have the PR approvals option that will show you all the workflow steps that this will take. You can also see the attachments that I attached on the form are in the attachment section, and I could also see any history or detailed audit trail if there were anything that I need to see. So in this case, I can submit this order, and now I am ready to go, and I can return back to the home page to complete another order. Now that we have completed a non-catalog order form, I figured we can jump into completing a blanket order form. Now before we do that, as best practice, we always want to look in the top right hand corner of our screen and make sure that we have the 000 and that there are no items in our cart. Once we have validated that, we can then click on the blanket order tile and begin completing the blanket order form. Now a blanket order is another word for an open order. It is cost driven, which means it's most likely going to be to cover some sort of a service. If it was an item, then we would put this on a non-catalog form. So if you scroll down, you'll notice that there is no part numbers or any type of item related fields for you to complete. Similar to the non-catalog form, once we start typing in the vendor name, we will notice that the vendor starts to populate. We can select the vendor and then complete the form. The next required piece of information is this a contract? So if it is a contract that you want purchasing to review, then you will select yes. If not, you will select no. If it's any type of documentation that you want purchasing to review, I would select yes for this anyway. Do I want to send this PO to the supplier? So as mentioned on the non-catalog form, if this PO or this blanket order is just to satisfy an invoice, then you will select no for this question. But if you want this to distribute to the vendor, you will select yes. The product description should be detailing exactly what the blanket order is covering. So for example, for this order, I would enter bottled water expenses for 2020. Notice the quantity is always 1 because the blanket order is cost driven. The total price should be the amount that you want to encumber to cover the cost associated with this blanket order. So for example, I would just put $1,000. Now commodity codes similar to the non-catalog form should be a general classification that the item or service falls into. So for example, if I typed in water, notice I do not have any proper results for this type of blanket order or this type of service. So maybe I'll type in beverage instead, and then I can select beverages. It's just a general classification that the service or item falls into. So I don't want you spending too much time trying to select the exact commodity code. The next required section would be the PO start date and end date. So I can simply click the calendar icon and select from a date, or I can type in the date, and maybe I want to use it to cover costs across through the end of the year. The next section is the same as the non-catalog form, just the independent contractor and consulting questions. So please read through them, and whatever applies, select the appropriate action. In this case, I will select no for them. The next section also is the payment instructions, similar to the non-catalog form. So if you do want to add special payment instructions for accounts payable to be triggered, you can trigger this drop-down box and then type in the special payment instructions. And then the next section will be the foreign vendor question, similar to the non-catalog form. So are these goods or services to be used or provided in the United States? If yes, select yes. If no, select no, and then detail the country that it will be used in. Then down at the bottom, please include the responsible persons for this open order in case somebody from procurement needs to reach out to them. So in this case, I will just put myself, and I will put my office number, and then scroll to the top, and I can select add and go to cart and click the go button as this form is complete. Now, once again, the only part of the process that changes part of me is the shopping process. So whether I'm going to create a punch out order, a hosted order, or use one of the showcase forms, That is the only part of the process that changes. From this screen forward, the process always remains the same. So on the simple checkout screen, I have to enter the description. So blanket order test. And then I can hit proceed to checkout and enter my accounting codes. Now, just to reiterate some of the things that we've already went through in this training, if I do not know the accounting codes, I can always assign the cart. But as a requester, once I enter all the required information, sorry, I keep putting the wrong number there. Once I enter all the required information, that submit to workflow button is available. Now, just to reiterate, the submit to workflow button is only available for those people with a requester role. A shopper and an approver will not have the submit to workflow button. Now, once I've filled out all the required information, I do my final review. I can then go ahead and submit this to workflow. Or if I'm not ready to submit this to workflow, I can return to the home page. Now, let's say I return to the home page and for some reason I have to create another order. I'm just going to follow my best practices, right? I'm going to look in the top right-hand corner and see if I have 000 and that there are no items in my cart. So if I click that, I notice that I am still in the blanket order cart, which means any type of order that I do is going to go into that cart. So what I want to do is navigate to the My Carts and Order section. I want to click the shopping cart icon to the left. I want to go to My Carts and Orders and click on View Carts. From View Carts, I can see in the top right-hand corner, Create Cart. Once I click Create Cart, as you can see, I have the 000. I can click back on the home icon and begin creating whatever type of order I would like to create. If I want to go back to that blanket order, I can navigate to the same section. I'm going to click the shopping cart icon. I'm going to go to My Carts and Orders, click on View Carts, click on the Draft Cart tab, and then I'm going to search for my draft cart, which is the blanket order test. Once I click on that, now I am back in that blanket order. I can hit the proceed to checkout button. If I am a requester, I will have the submit to workflow button. If I am not, that submit to workflow button will not be there, and I can assign that cart over to somebody to complete the next step. On behalf of Procurement Services, I would like to thank you for watching our Epro overview training video. If you have any questions, please send us an email. Please subscribe to our channel so that you can be alerted whenever we release new training videos. Also, please follow the links in the description to access additional task-related training videos for a better focus on very specific tasks that you can perform in the Epro system. Also, navigate to our channel and see all of our training videos that we have available. Thank you.